The expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
Knowingly lied? Uh-oh, that's going towards a mens rea. That's somebody's mindset, right? That's intent, guilty mind. Confirm what many Americans have known. The Russia hoax was a lie that was knowingly created by the Obama administration to undermine the legitimacy and the power of the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. The DOJ, Pam Bondi, now announcing a strike force. We had Tulsi Gabbard also today confirm that we're talking about Obama getting a criminal referral over to the DOJ. She was asked about that. She also released this entire new X thread that chronicles all the crimes, in addition to this massive report, which is now revealed and declassified to the American people. So we're going to go through it all. But the DOJ is now catching the ball. Okay, Tulsi came out. She's throwing it over to the DOJ. We've been asking, what are they going to do about this? Are they going to appoint a special counsel? Are they going to come Jack Smith this whole thing up? We've been waiting to see what Pam will do, and we've been encouraging proper action. So the DOJ posted this. The Justice Department today, they say Justice Department announces formation of strike force to assess evidence publicized by Tulsi Gabbard, which we're going to dig into like a delicious meatball. Here is what Tulsi had to say. And she's explaining that it is Obama that is also the one who's being referred to for prosecution. Tulsi was out. She spoke for a long time today, but this was a very pointed question from this journo who said the following. Are you talking about Barack?
Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former
The
President
evidence,
Obama?
correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Yeah.
Mr. Gabbard, thank you. So just two questions, but to begin on that. The president yesterday, you've inferred that the former president helped lead a coup. Based on what you now see, do you believe President Obama is guilty of treason?
I'm leaving the criminal charges to the Department of Justice. I am not an attorney, but as I've said previously, when you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document that directly contradicts multiple assessments that were created by the intelligence community, the expressed intent and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
Yeah, baby, let's go. That sounds right. That sounds accurate. Nailed it. 10 out of 10, A++, 5-star review, would listen to again. It was well done, and it's exactly right. And this is something that we have been waiting to hear for a long time. It's very interesting to have Tulsi Gabbard come out and deliver it. And there was more in the post. So we're going to go through the post. Then we're going to take a look at some potential charges. And we'll see, well, this is what the evidence says. And in fact, let's look at the charges first, and then we can apply the evidence to what the law says. And here is what we've got in two possibilities. Now, people are throwing these around and saying, well, is this treason? I mean, they're talking about treasonous conspiracy. They're talking about seditious conspiracy, right? This was trying to be a coup attempt to subvert the American government away from the president into Hillary Clinton's teeth. And now what you can see is this is the actual law. 18 U.S. Code 2384 comes over from Cornell. They've got a nice compendium of all the statutes. They say if two or more persons in any state or territory, like Obama, Brennan, Comey, and all of them, or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, which is America, if they conspire to overthrow, to put down, or to destroy by force the government of the United States, or, right, to levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law, or by force seize, take, or possess any property of the United States contrary to the authority thereof, you know, like the White House, which didn't belong to you, Obama, they each shall be fined under this title or in prison not more than 20 years or both. Okay, so there's a lot of conduct in there. So it's not just war, seditious conspiracy, a much broader statute. And remember, the Proud Boys got charged with this. The Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, all with seditious conspiracy. And you know what their crime was ultimately? Sending text messages in Telegram groups and being there and going into the building. And many of them were defensive of law enforcement. And we saw that come out in evidence. But they were also outnumbered by government co-conspirators in the form of Homeland Security investigators who were in there in the crowd, likely instigating the whole thing. And the pipe bomb guy was never found. That diverted all the attention away from the Capitol building. And people just walked in. In fact, cops were tapping people on the shoulder, who played the videos here many times. Yeah, of course. 2 or more people to oppose by force the authority thereof of the incoming president, right? By the statute, by the traditions, by the precedent. The president incoming should get new presidential daily briefings and be familiar with what's actually going on. Now, this is not what was allowed to happen, right? They were trying to keep him under the radar and set him up for a Russia collusion scam. So that's one statute. You can see how we can apply that one. Here's treason now. 18 U.S. Code 2381. This was codified, but a lot of this came from, obviously, the Constitution. Article 3, Section 3, treason, Clause 1 from the Constitution. Treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them, or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on a confession in open court. And there was a case here involving Aaron Burr. You remember his name. And they gave us a little snippet over here. There was a Chief Justice called John Marshall, the same guy who gave us Marbury versus Madison, a seminal case that established judicial review in American jurisprudence. And in this case, they say after authoring the Supreme Court's decision in Ex parte Bowman, in which the court ordered the discharge of 2 of Aaron Burr's associates. Okay, so a prior case, and Aaron Burr's people were discharged. It says Chief Justice presided over the treason trial. So we got some historical precedent for other people who have been charged with treason. Now, Chief Justice, he denied a motion to introduce certain collateral evidence bearing on Burr's activity. Okay, so certain evidence couldn't come in. He says, well, that's not really relevant here, so I'm going to keep that out. And what that means is that the standard is high in how you can introduce evidence, ultimately. So in brief, Chief Justice Marshall's ruling held that Burr, who had not been present on the island, he wasn't physically there at the island, whether he could be convicted of advising or procuring or levying war if 2 people said so. He said, well, Chief Justice Marshall, well, the operation had been covert, so the testimony, because it's covert, is naturally unobtainable, but the pronouncement of all this means that in practice, it's extremely difficult to convict one of levying war against the United States, short of conduct of or personal participation in actual hostilities, right? So, like, there's some precedent in that from a very early 1807 Supreme Court case where, treason is actual hostilities, and Chief Justice Marshall was trying to essentially save Aaron Burr, and Chief Justice Marshall did a lot of that, where he was trying to just kind of create these resolutions, and he did that in Marbury versus Madison, just kind of said, well, this is what we're going to do, and solve these conflicts using the courts to do it, which some people might say is highly inappropriate. But that is what the Constitution says. Then the statute codifies that, 18 U.S. Code 2381, for treason, saying whoever owing allegiance to the United States, like Obama would, levies war against them or adheres to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort within the United States or elsewhere, is guilty of treason and shall suffer death, or shall be in prison not less than 5 years and fined under the title, and shall be incapable of holding any office under the United States. And so that's a big one, right? And the question, of course, who is an enemy of the United States? Is a group of co-conspirators who were conspiring to seize power, is that an enemy? Is that a domestic enemy? Is that a foreign enemy? How would all this be applied? So lots of questions surrounding that, and we'll see if anything comes of it, right? And the strike force has now been formed, and that will come to some sort of conclusion. We'll see if we get a special counsel. We'll see if this is just the opening salvo or what comes next. But we had Tulsi Gabbard out. We also had Caroline Leavitt, and she was out today with an announcement before Tulsi came out. So Caroline will give us a little of an introduction, and then we'll jump into the meat and potatoes on this thing, because we got 46 pages of corruption to review that was emanating out of the Democrats. Here is Caroline Leavitt from today.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard has unveiled shocking new evidence that former President Barack Obama and top aides in the Obama administration conspired to subvert President Trump's 2016 election victory and undermine the democratic will of the American people, while publicly pretending to engage in a peaceful transfer of power. In private, former President Obama went to great and nefarious lengths to try to sow discord among the public and sabotage his successor, President Trump. The new evidence released by the Director of National Intelligence, who is here with me today, confirms that the Obama administration manufactured politicized intelligence, which was later used as a justification for baseless smears against President Trump in an effort to try to delegitimize his victory before he even took the oath of office. The truth is that President Trump never had anything to do with Russia, and the Russia collusion hoax was a massive fraud perpetuated on the American people from the very beginning. And the worst part of this is Obama knew that truth, and so did all of the other corrupt officials involved in this scam, including former CIA Director John Brennan, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper, former FBI Director James Comey, former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, and many others. Director of National Intelligence Gabbard's report further confirms what we already knew. There was no collusion. collusion, no corruption, except on the part of Barack Obama and the weaponized intelligence agencies at the time. The Russia hoax was a blatant lie, all ginned up by Democrat political operatives that were signed off on by then-President Obama and leaked to the news media to launch a years-long witch hunt against President Trump and his first administration. Allies of the president, including his own son, Donald Trump Jr., were disgustingly smeared as Russian assets, and some even had their lives destroyed because of this vicious lie. The president's first 2 years in office had this fake distraction hanging over it, and endless resources, time, and political capital were spent having to debunk these lies from the highest levels of our government.
Thanks, Obama.
Now, nearly 10 years later, thanks to the declassification of documents by Director Gabbard, the truth has finally come to light.
And we're going to take a look at it. We're excited to do that. Now, here's what Tulsi posted over on X today. She said, hey, new evidence has emerged of the most egregious weaponization and politicization of intelligence in American history. And I know there's a lot of doubt about whether this is going to come to anything. And you can just be clear about this. If it doesn't come to anything, if nobody gets charged, if we just fast forward 2 years and it's all just, we can't do anything, conflicts, or we have some privileges, or we think Supreme Court are going to, if we get some garbage excuses and we fast forward to this, it will be one of the most embarrassing failures in modern American history, okay? Because they're coming out here like 10 out of 10 overdrive, swinging for the fences. Tulsi Gabbard calling out Obama specifically. Trump called it out from the Oval Office. And if they then don't deliver on this, it's going to be really pathetic. So per President Trump's directive, I have declassified a House Intel Oversight Majority Staff report that exposes how the Obama administration manufactured the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting the lie that Vladimir Putin and Russia helped Trump win. Now, in doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the American people, working with their partners in the media to promote the lie in order to undermine the legitimacy of Trump, essentially enacting a years-long coup against him. Here you can see a little bit of mind map. You can see there was a real intelligence assessment. Trump won the election. There was a brief that was pulled off Obama's desk because they didn't want him to have this brief that said, actually, Russia didn't do anything. Then the secret meeting happened on 12/9, December 9th. Then Obama issues the order. Per the president's request, IC comes back, the intelligence community, gets a new task from Obama. The election was hacked, wasn't it? CIA warns John Brennan. We don't have direct information that Putin wanted Trump elected at all. Another intelligence official says the Steele dossier, which was Hillary Clinton's propaganda, was a factor in the Obama intelligence brief. Okay, so it was fake. The brief was based on Hillary's propaganda that they knew was fake, but they just needed a fake justification for it, like, well, choose that. And they used it. So then they politicized the intelligence. Intelligence report was subject to unusual directives from the president, says some other person, saying that Obama was nudging this along. We got Loretta Lynch, as we saw yesterday, was funneling information to Hillary's campaign. Comey and the rest of them were listening to conversations with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, saying, don't worry about Hillary. She deleted her emails, so she's never going to get in trouble by the FBI because we got it all rigged. Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac. Now, intelligence officials disregarded behavior that undermined the idea that Putin wanted to help Trump, and that's what they ran with. So then they leak it all, goes to the New York Times, goes to NBC News, goes to the Washington Post, fake hack media, and they publish all the stories like good little automatons who can't think for themselves. Fake weaponized assessment comes out, and boom, pencil neck Schiff, and this looks like pencil neck Mueller too. They give him a little bit of a longer neck there or something, but they ran with it and of course lied through their teeth about it, and then they came back down and they changed everything, like, well, Russia like touched our elections, so they were like involved and they like meddled is the word they used. What does that even mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. That's why they used it, because they meddled in the election. Okay, great job. And it sounds more ominous than Russia, probes, and you would imagine every country's kind of nudging each other, and we've seen that. Even Ted Cruz admitted that the Israelis are spying on us, we're spying on them. He's like, whatever, it's not a big deal. So you would imagine that a lot of that's going on, and so they just take something that is kind of standard, routine, nation state, international election nearing whatever's going on, and they turn that into something that it isn't, and they use Hillary Clinton's propaganda to do it. They're sick. Now, Tulsi says, here's a lie. They came out and they said Putin and the Russian government helped Trump win because their attempt was trying to invalidate it. But the truth is that Obama and the former director of the CIA, John Brennan, and others fabricated this entire hoax. They suppressed intelligence showing that actually Putin wanted or was preparing for a Clinton victory and held information that he thinks would have been damaging to a Clinton administration back. They made up findings from shoddy sources. They disobeyed intelligence community standards, and they knowingly lied to the American people. And attorneys and prosecutors in particular particular, kind of looking at that as a term of art. You know what I mean? Knowingly lied. That's going towards a mens rea. That's somebody's mindset, right? That's intent, guilty mind. And they knew what they were doing. And that's a hard thing to prove in many cases. Because what do you mean? Like they knew it was false and they did it anyways? Wow. You got evidence to support that? Here's another lie from Tulsi. The fabricated Steele dossier was not used as a source in the Obama administration and their assessment. The Steele dossier, a fake report that Hillary Clinton tried to shove down the FBI's gullet, and then they invalidated it, right? It's ridiculous. And then they incorporated it into their report. It's a false pretense. It's fraud. Not only did the CIA director Brennan and Comey and Clapper and others include the Steele dossier because they needed like some extra, like a page limit. You know, it's like you have to turn it's 30 pages, turn it in. Like we got like 20. Like what else we got? It's not good enough. So we need this one. Put that in there. 31 pages. Perfect. And Clapper and others, they overruled senior intel officials who said this was fabricated. You can't use this as a basis for your intelligence decisions and what to do with Trump. And they said it should not be used. But the hacks, Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, the criminal co-conspirators, overruled the actual intelligence. Here's another lie. The Obama administration in their January report was an independent intelligence community product produced with apolitical analysis from the same John Brennan and the CIA entity that organized the cover-up of Hunter Biden, right? It's the same people. Here's the truth from Tulsi. Obama ordered the intelligence community to create an intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting a contrived narrative with the intent of undermining the legitimacy and the power of a duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. And together with the records released today, Tulsi says, plus what we released last week on Friday that we also covered here, plus the Clinton Annex, which we saw from Chuck Grassley yesterday here, they released earlier this week, they say, this is very clear. Plus the House Oversight Report that we released today that we're about to read, confirm what many Americans have known. The Russia hoax was a lie that was knowingly, again, term of art, created by the Obama administration to undermine the legitimacy and the power of the duly elected president of the United States, Donald Trump. And so Tulsi's essentially, laying out a structure for an indictment there, making the criminal referral over to Pam Bondi, and Bondi creates the strike force. So we'll see what she does from here.